Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. I'm Ben Schneider in for Joe Samniego today, and with me are Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish, Josh Birch, and Matt Rowe. Before we get started, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin. Thank you for investing in Grid Network and supporting our coverage throughout the 2022 motorsports season. This week, Formula One visits Mexico City, NASCAR determines their championship four at Martinsville, and Supercars makes a return to Surfer's Paradise. Let's get the show underway with our preview of the Mexico City Grand Prix.
Thank you, Ben. And that's right. The Mexican Grand Prix weekend is here, and we had some interesting things unfold. And starting with free practice one, Carlos Sainz was the fastest. Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen, and Lewis Hamilton ran out the top five. Then in free practice two, we saw George Russell on top, while Charles Leclerc crashed and got heavy rear end damage. Perez and Verstappen were fifth and sixth behind Lewis Hamilton and fourth. And starting with you, Josh, is there any clear favorite for pole later this afternoon?
I honestly don't think there is for once in Mexico. Usually we say it's either a Red Bull or a Mercedes, but Mercedes has been off the pace so much this year as well, and Red Bull have looked okay but slightly struggled so far this weekend as well. In fact, it's been Ferrari sort of been shining the light at the moment as well, so they could go quite well. But the one thing I'm worried about is that for the cars that stopped at the track, three of which as well were Ferrari-powered cars, so that's a bit of a worry for me. And of course, the other was a Honda engine AlphaTauri, which is the same Red Bull powertrain with Honda's engine in the Red Bull. So we could be in for a completely unpredictable qualifying coming up, and practice three as well in the next 45 minutes or so is going to be even better. So my top expectation for pole position would be watch out for surprising people taking the front as well. The likes maybe even George Russell getting his second pole of the season after Hungary. It's that type of day, I feel, because reliability is going to struggle.
Yeah, well, if you'd asked me after FP1, I probably would have gone with the Ferraris. But, looking at these free practice 2 results and seeing them a little bit further down the table, of course, practice times aren't always indicative of what we're going to see in qualifying, but I think it is going to be a little bit harder to predict. Like Josh was saying, I think we could see a Red Bull or Ferrari. We could see some power unit unreliability strike again. Maybe somebody like George Russell can get up there and take a kind of surprise pole position. So we'll just have to wait and see. I guess we'll know in a few hours.
Yes, for sure. We're going to find out in a few hours' time how things are going. And right now, if I had to pick anybody, probably going to be the Red Bulls on top. But who knows? Whenever you cut to Mexico City, it always seems unpredictable what can happen. And speaking of Red Bull, they were handed their penalty for going over the budget cap in 2021. They'll have to pay $7 million to the FIA, a 10% reduction in wind tunnel testing time. The coefficient used to calculate their allocation will drop from 70% to 63%. Josh, could this penalty greatly impact the development of the 2023 Red Bull F1 car?
Yeah, I think for next season as well, Red Bull, sort of, Christian Horner said it doesn't really matter. He sort of like he didn't look bothered, but we all know that's not exactly going to be the truth. It's all going to be a big factor about the fact that they already lose 70%, as you say, of their reduction in the airtime because of the Constructors' Championship. That then goes down for the 7 to 63%. So that's a big, big loss of aero time. And it could be exactly what Mercedes needs to catch up as well in terms of the performance that they lost this year with the aerodynamics of their car. Because we know the power unit is sound. We've seen that. Nothing's changed with the power unit rules. Mercedes is still a very quick car. The aerodynamics and the ground effect that they've got the problem with. So if they get that sorted with this wind tunnel debate as well, that's going to be even better. So I honestly said in practice yesterday on my watch along, and I'll say it here now as well, next season could be fantastic, because what we're going to see is Red Bull slower because of less development time. They're going to be practically stuck with their current car for another season, and Ferrari and Mercedes getting quicker and quicker and quicker. Next year we could have a three-way battle for the title as well. So Christian Horner played it off in the press conference yesterday as, well, we're not really bothered. We mainly want an apology from our rivals for slandering us for so much as well. The usual Christian Horner rubbish that he keeps talking as well about trying to big up Red Bull and not accept responsibility. He spent an extra 2.2 million over the budget. Yes, some of that should have come back in tax. The fact it didn't put them over the budget cap by what was supposed to be $400,000 turned out to be 2.2 million. That I don't think is all tax back. That's insane to think that. So Red Bull definitely went over the budget cap. In my opinion, it's slightly too lenient. I can see why they've fined them 7 million as well, not billion, 7 million as well. But I personally would have issued some harsher impacts on next year's car as well, with maybe penalize them a day of testing as well, because we get 3 days of testing, each 8 hours. I would have personally just knocked off a day of that and say, that's your penalty for overspeeding on your car and doing extra development, because Williams lost testing 1 day a couple of years ago in 2019. They weren't even at the first test. I was at the second test, and even then they were still struggling with what they had in the car. So there's a lot of work still to do, and I think this little penalty will deeply affect the field, but only in terms of that it will bring Ferrari and Mercedes closer.
Yes, and we certainly hope in 2023 that we'll see a lot more competitive F1 field. This penalty not that great for Red Bull, but it could be great in terms of parity. We certainly want to see a three-way fight at the front of the field again between Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. At the beginning of the year, like it was going to be a year of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc battling for the title, but after the first couple of races of the season, Ferrari really fell off and Red Bull just took over. And maybe with the playing field, I guess, being evened out a little bit here for next year, maybe we'll see Ferrari, Mercedes back in the fight. I think that would be great to see those those three teams battling for race wins on a more consistent basis. And now another penalty we discussed on Grid tonight was Fernando Alonso's 30-second time penalty since Wednesday, as we correctly predicted. For once, we actually got one right this time. The penalty has been reversed, so Alonso is awarded 7th place again. This puts Alpine 11 points ahead of McLaren, and then the constructors, Alonso and Ocon, were faster than McLaren, with Lando Norris in 14th and Daniel Ricciardo in 15th place. Is Alpine getting better and better, or is McLaren losing pace to everyone else?
I'd say it's probably a little bit of both when you have a swing that much. And I think, again, I cannot believe that the Alpine was even able to stay in the race last weekend, let alone have Fernando Alonso drag it back up that far into the points, then get the penalty, then have the penalty taken away from him. So I think that was probably the right decision. You know, I'm obviously, people know if they watch this show, they know that I'm not a fan of post-race penalties or anything like that. You know, I would rather see the penalties thrown out there in the middle of the race if they're going to be penalized at all. But good for Alpine to get that spot back. Good for Fernando Alonso as well. Obviously, we know the talent that he is behind the wheel of an F1 car. But, obviously with McLaren as well, it's been a tough year for Daniel Ricciardo all season. But, to see Norris down there in 14th place as well, I think that kind of speaks to maybe McLaren having lost his step just as much as Alpine has gained one. So I would say it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree as well. It's nice to see a penalty taken away that it was wrongfully given as well. And we heard this as well yesterday when Ted Kravitz took over Sky from commentary because Sky had a power failure in their boxes. Ted was asking Gunther Steiner, who told you that you could have an hour to lodge the protest? Immediately, Gunther Steiner went, the race director. The race director. So Niles Rittick, the race director, told Haas they could have an hour to lodge the protest, knowing full well it's only half an hour. So this is another instance of the FIA race directors not knowing the rules and not knowing what they are doing. It's getting insane now because that's what 4 races running. We've had some sort of issue with the race director. It is not that much of, it's not that difficult of a job. I can't understand why they're getting it so wrong. Formula One is in a bad place right now because of the FIA, and they keep making these rookie mistakes. You don't see this in any other series. When was the last time you saw IndyCar make a mistake like this? Or, well, I'm not going to say NASCAR, but IndyCar make a mistake like this as well. I can see Ben laughing in the one. Yeah, where's the last time IndyCar made a mistake like this as well? It's insane. Get hold of yourself. As well, and for the FIA race director once again to say they had an hour and then again superseding the rules, the stewards allowed it even though it's 54 minutes after, not 29. It's insane. So I think going into 2023 there needs to be a permanent race director that isn't anybody connected to Formula 1. We need a new guy come in, new guy or girl come in, get the job done, get it done right, because we're just failing at this. We're looking like amateurs. To quote Gunter Steiner, we look like a bunch of bleeping amateurs as well. It's unbelievable. He used something else beginning with a W, but I needed to say the ending because I can't just go bleep bleep. But honestly, it's embarrassing sometimes to be a fan of this series because it's the governing body shooting itself in the foot.
Yeah, certainly, Josh. And there's a lot of things that the FI really needs to clean up. Will they be able to clean it up? Who knows? But my prediction is probably not. And we'll be talking about the exact same problems 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, basically for the rest of our lives. And getting back to the racing action itself, qualifying is always super important here in Mexico. The lone front straight allows for the slipstream to come into play and potentially gives the second row and behind an advantage. Last year, Max Verstappen went from third to the lead. We also saw Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, Yuki Tsunoda, and Mick Schumacher all sustained damage during the race. So, Josh Thorne, back to you again. Could we see a chaotic race in Mexico City? And how important will the slipstream be this year?
Last year, it wasn't that important, and we saw an okay Grand Prix. This year, it's going to be mighty important. The ground effect, we saw how much it improved coaches race a week ago, where every 5 seconds it was literally crash, bang, wallop, something else was happening in the entire field. And that's because the ground effect car just allowed everybody to stay so close to each other so constantly as well. It's going to be similar here in Mexico as well. Yes, we've got the tight, twiddly middle section as well, but it's a fast middle section, akin to Maggots and Beckett's a lot. So that's going to be quick. Follow Solo, bunch everybody back up again, and then the long straight after the Peldada down towards turn 1. From pole position to the first corner, it's 871 meters. From the last corner to turn 1, it's over a kilometer in distance as well. So amazing amount of slipstream we're going to see. And just for everybody to know, the DRS zone is also 868 meters long as well before the first corner braking zone, because it's just after the first lot of the pit lane of the pole position slot. So we're going to be in for a great Grand Prix, and we're going to be in for an outstanding qualifying. I can't wait for tonight. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'll echo everything you said there, Josh. And I'm vaguely remembering, I forget exactly which year it was, but I think a few years back, I don't know if Red Bull locked out the front row or if it was Ricciardo on pole or Verstappen or whoever, but
that was it. You've got it bang on.
The Red Bulls were faster over the course of the entire lap, but Mercedes, I believe, had a power unit advantage that year. They had the stronger straight line speed, plus they had the slipstream on the start. So qualifying is always interesting at Mexico, especially in a situation like that where one car might be faster over the entire lap average, but if another car has a straight line advantage, especially on a track like this, that's going to play a massive, massive role heading into the first corner and going to make things very interesting. So I'm with you. I think we're going to definitely see a bit of a chaotic race, certainly a chaotic start in Mexico City tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Certainly, it could be a chaotic start. And Josh, understand you need to get ready for Free Practice 3 on your own YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to Joshua Birch Motorsport so you can follow all the action happening today in Mexico City over there. And before I let you go, I'm gonna let you do your pick a winner for the Mexican Grand Prix, NASCAR at Martinsville. And if you want to get another easy point with supercars, you can go with Shane van Gisbergen again.
done it, Shane van Gisbergen, because I was very happy to wake up and see that race of Service Paradise as well. So, yeah, I'll go with SVG, who, as Joe mentioned earlier on, he's got, 64% in the grid ranking? And Jamie Chadwick's got the most, over 71%, which is amazing in win ratio this season. So, brilliant to see these guys and girls getting up there as well and proving some great things. I'm going to skip Martinsville because I've just had enough time to see it yet. So I'm going to give that prediction in a tweet tomorrow. So stay tuned to the Grid Network Twitter account, and I'll send it there. And for Formula One, it's difficult. Okay, not really. Sergio Perez, he'll win. It has to happen. It has to, and it'll be tomorrow. So Sergio Perez will win in Mexico, and the entire of Mexico City will erupt in thunderous applause.
Yes, sir. They gotta love a Checo win in front of his home fans there in Mexico City. And Josh, we'll let you go get ready for your broadcast. Now I'm gonna bring Matthew Bro back in for NASCAR as we send Josh off.
Thanks, guys. Have a good show.
Thank you, Josh. We'll talk to you soon. All right, well, let's get into the NASCAR preview at Martinsville Speedway, once again hosting the last race before the championship race, the penultimate race of the season. 3 drivers will get into the championship 4 at Phoenix. 4 others will be eliminated. Only Joey Logano is locked in by virtue of his win at Las Vegas earlier this round. If Logano or a non-playoff driver wins at Martinsville, it will be the second year in a row that only one driver has won their way into the championship 4. Last year, Kyle Larson won 2 of the 3 races in the round of 8, while Alex Bowman won Martinsville after he was previously eliminated from the playoffs. So, Matt, we'll go to you first here. If Logano were to be the only championship 4 driver to win his way in, would that give him extra confidence heading into Phoenix?
I believe absolutely. I mean, like we saw last year, Kyle Larson was the only driver that in the playoffs to win in the round of 8. I think Kyle Larson just dominated all of last season anyway. I think absolutely Joey Logano's got to be happy today during practice, got to be happy tomorrow during the race, because he knows no matter what happens to him, he will be fighting for a championship next weekend. So, yeah, really, to answer your question, I think absolutely he's got to have the extra confidence. I mean, I think we saw the way Kyle Larson drove at Phoenix last season. I think absolutely that he's got to have this confidence, because he's just got to look in the past. I mean, history tends to repeat itself sometimes, especially in the sport of NASCAR. So if you see somebody dominate and then win the championship the next race, I think Joey Logano is in the best position right now to go win his second NASCAR Cup Series championship.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Matthew. I think Joey Logano is in a really good position, although I think this will give him extra confidence heading into Phoenix, if another driver doesn't win their way into the championship 4, coming to Phoenix year after year, or even when we're still having the finale at Homestead, magically the championship 4, they always end up at some point in the race running 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think it's really going to be anybody's game, as we know with this current playoff system. It comes down to just one race. You can have the best season in the world, get down to the final race, have a mechanical failure, something go wrong, and it goes out the window just like that. So as we know, Joey Logano, he'll be one of 4 drivers going for this NASCAR Cup Series championship, and I think everyone, whoever the final 4 are, they're going to be on equal footing. And Joey Logano is going to have the same chance to win as the rest of them. But certainly, I'd want to be the only driver in the round of 8 to get the victory, because I'd have some momentum heading into Phoenix.
Now, of course, we've got to keep an eye on the Owners' Championship battle as well. That's why I don't necessarily think we're going to see those 4 championship 4 drivers running 1, 2, 3, 4, because we've got that split kind of Owners' Championship battle with Kyle Larson winning last week at Homestead. And, of course, Ryan Blaney didn't even make the Owners' Championship. If he were to win his way in today, that would throw another wrench into those things as well and really cause a split championship battle. So another thing to keep our eye on as we head into the last couple of races here. Now, the 3 drivers on the positive side of the cut line entering Martinsville are Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, and William Byron. Chastain may have a long day ahead of him, as he has several drivers that may give him a hard time based on previous incidents that happened earlier this season. One of those drivers, Denny Hamlin, is 5 points outside the cut line. Now, Hamlin told Danica Patrick on her Pretty Intense podcast this week that he and Chastain met for breakfast earlier after one of the incidents this season took place, where Denny got a better understanding of how Ross races, his driving style, and how it compares to his own. So, Kobe, if given the opportunity, do you believe Denny Hamlin would deliberately retaliate against Ross Chastain if it meant getting into a championship 4, or will he just focus on beating William Byron, who's 5 points ahead?
Well, Ben, first I actually want to respond to what Denny Hamlin told Danica Patrick on her pretty intense podcast. I was actually really surprised to learn that Denny and Ross were able to sit down for breakfast and consider Ross Chastain's reputation for making enemies on the racetrack and racing the driver is very hard. I think that this is a really important step for Ross Chastain, reaching out to a Cup Series veteran like Denny Hamlin, somebody who he's rubbed the wrong way and had issues with several times this season, to just sit down, talk about it. And I think this is the first step, for Ross Chastain, regaining some of the respect that he lost in the NASCAR Cup Series garage. And I've actually seen a big difference in Ross Chastain, in this later second half of the season. And even Ross himself noted, he sees the progress he made. He understands, that he needs to pick and choose his battles. He doesn't need to race every single lap like it's the last lap. And I think that will certainly benefit Chastain in the long run. So it's really good to see that him and Denny Hamlin were able to sit down, air out their differences and talk. I think, as I said, that's a really important first step. So if that's the case, maybe Ross and Denny will be able to get along with each other on the track moving forward. But I think right now the most important thing for Denny Hamlin is to just focus on those stage points. I think trying to win stage 1, stage 2 should be a big goal for him right now. You get those 20 points, you can certainly make yourself you can put yourself in a great position entering that final stage of the race. So if something goes wrong, the pressure on you will be a lot less. But who knows? This is Martinsville, beating and banging 500 laps. That final stage is going to be really crazy. A lot of things could go wrong, but for right now, I think Hamlin needs to focus on just beating William Byron. But if Denny Hamlin has a bad stage 1, stage 2, Ross Chastain is leading on the final lap, Hamlin's in second. Even if it's not Ross Chastain, you know what Denny's going to do. You know what any driver's going to do. They're going to use the bumper and move them out of the way, because that's just the format that we're in nowadays.
And I can definitely agree with that. I think it'd be the worst possible thing Denny Hamlin can do is if he deliberately took out Chastain. Happened with his own driver over the past couple weeks. And I mean, Denny Hamlin's also had some issues with Martinsville, and Chevrolets, especially last year with Alex Bowman and that whole situation that had happened. But this is one of Denny Hamlin's best racetracks. I mean, in 33 races here, he has 5 wins, 26 top 20s. And if he leads 13 laps tomorrow, keep in mind, this will be 2,000 laps led at Martinsville for Denny Hamlin. So if he decides overly aggressive and not like himself at this track, well, maybe that is like himself at this track, I think that'd be worse for him. And I think he might miss the Final Four if he does such a thing like that. I can agree with Kobe. I think he needs to race William Byron hard, but I wouldn't worry too much about Chase Elliott and Ross Chastain, guys who are farther ahead. Denny Hamlin's not trying to jump from 5th to 2nd. He should be trying to get into the top 4 here. And there's a couple drivers, I think Ryan Blaney is one of them, who is very, very successful here at Martinsville, who probably needs to drive a little more aggressively in order to point his way in. Because I know unless there's a very early between the playoff drivers, Blaney's one of those guys who needs to win to get in. So I expect it more on that side, but I think this would be a terrible time to deliberately take someone out, especially when we saw the 2020 playoffs with Kevin Harvick for the race, needed to get those extra couple points and took Kyle Busch out and then took himself out, and Kyle Busch finished in the same position, and Kevin Harvick missed the playoffs, having one of the most dominant seasons we had seen in NASCAR previously. Would have won the regular season championship with a couple races left and misses the Final Four because he tried to intentionally take Kyle Busch out to get that extra point. So I think if Denny Hamlin looks at the past, he's not going to do that. So you can only hope, as if you are Toyota Racing Development, if you're Joe Gibbs, you can only hope he doesn't do that.
Well, along with Hamlin, Blaney is 18 points out. Ryan Blaney, that is, most likely in a must-win situation unless he picks up several stage points or others in front of him have bad luck or an early DNF. Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe are even further behind. Both of them are absolutely in must-win situations. So Matt, would you place Bell and or Briscoe on your short list of, let's say, 5 drivers likely to win at Martinsville this weekend?
I mean, yes and no. So I'm going to say yes because they're playoff drivers, but I would probably put 5 other playoff drivers ahead of these two, simply because, well, they've had just bad. I mean, Christopher Bell had bad luck, but he's shown that. And Chase Briscoe's had terrible luck this past round, despite lucking his way into the round of 12 and then the round of 8. But teach their own with that. I wouldn't say that simply because I don't believe either of these drivers have that great of finishes at Martinsville. I believe Christopher Bell only has like 1 top 10 here in his entire NASCAR Cup Series career, and I believe it was like a 7th place finish. I don't remember when that was. And then Chase Briscoe's only raced here 3 times, and I believe he finished 9th in the most recent race. So just because they're playoff drivers, I think you could put, however, I would probably put 5 drivers in the playoffs currently ahead of them on that list.
Yeah, Matthew, I totally agree with you. I'd put 5 drivers who are still in the hunt on that list. And I'd even put 5 non-playoff drivers on the list ahead of them as well. I think Christopher Bell has certainly had some good runs, but unfortunately he's on the out. He's really on the outside looking in. He's really gonna have to you know I guess do that, have a game 7 type moment like he had at the Charlotte Roval if he wants to go to Phoenix and have a shot to win the championship. Chase Briscoe, I think he's an extreme long shot to try to go out there and win, but who knows? We could get a late race caution. Everybody comes pits for tire. Chase Briscoe decides to stay out and somehow stays out front and ends up winning the race, going to Phoenix where he won earlier this year. If Chase Briscoe somehow defies the odds against him right now and goes to Phoenix, that would be quite remarkable considering he's the spring race winner there. Had a really good run earlier this year, and it would be really wild if Chase Briscoe was able to advance and go to Phoenix and have a shot to win the championship. And when I was writing a column for the podium finish earlier in the week about Chase Briscoe, I said that he's really like the underdog still left in this playoffs fight. A lot of people didn't expect Chase Briscoe to make it this far because when you make the round of 8 in sports, we call that a deep playoff run. Many people, including myself, had him out in the round of 16. Then he had the round of 12. I also had him out in the round of 12, like many people. Then look at him now. He's in the round of 8. So I think the best thing Chase Briscoe has going, that he can use the motivation of all the doubters out there, to go out there, prove us all wrong again, make the championship 4.
Well, Martinsville is a short track that often leads to short tempers, and we've seen plenty of retaliation and pit road altercations over the years. We also still have safety concerns with a next-gen car, particularly with the rear clip when backing into the wall. Bubba Wallace is also back this week after being suspended for a week for intentionally wrecking Kyle Larson at Las Vegas. So, Kobe, do you believe NASCAR will allow the usual beating and banging we've seen at Martinsville, particularly in recent years, or could someone cross the line in NASCAR's eyes?
Well, Ben, with this new president that NASCAR has set, I think there could be some moments where they'll allow, as they say, boys have at it, but there'll be other times where they're going to be like, that you can't do that. I think if you see someone get right hook like what Bubba Wallace did to Kyle Larson at Las Vegas, especially on a faster track, like if it happens like at a Michigan, a Las Vegas again, a Homestead, in Atlanta, someplace like that, I think you'll see NASCAR say they crossed the line and we could see another suspension take place. But Martinsville, if you just put the bumper to the back of somebody, just move them up the track, put them in the wall, I don't think NASCAR is going to do anything like that. Even what we saw last year at Martinsville in the closing lap when Alice Bowman got into the back of Denny Hamlin and spun him out of there. And if that was for the win, I don't think NASCAR would do anything there because, yeah, you don't want to see drivers getting dumped out of the lead or anywhere, but that's just a product of what we see when you put a stock car on a short track. I think NASCAR is still gonna allow the drivers to go out there and police themselves, but not cross the line. What we saw going 180, 190 miles per hour, you right hook somebody. I think NASCAR will come down on the right hooks, but if someone gets moved out of the way or just spun out like we saw Bowman do, Hamlin did last year, I really don't think that they would do anything significant in that area.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I think it's very difficult for NASCAR to determine like what's going to happen in terms of a suspension. Like, granted, the only other time we have seen a driver intentionally wreck someone to get suspended besides Bubba Wallace was at Martinsville with Matt Kenseth. 7 years ago? I can't believe that. I was 13 years old when that, or 13 or 14 years old when that happened. That's kind of crazy to think about. But I think NASCAR should, and they will, allow the usual beating and banging. Like, we just saw Bubba Wallace's apology today on Twitter. Like, in the interview, first media session since being suspended, said he had a good conversation with Kyle Larson, said all that stuff. He learned his lesson. I mean, anyone can say that. Let's just hope he did learn his lesson, because we don't want to see something like that occur once again. But so, also, I mean, it depends on how deliberate it is. Like, is it going to be an Alex Bowman pushing someone out of the way to win the race, or is it going to be something like Kevin Harvick with Kyle Busch the previous year? So clearly we have a repetition in intentionally moving people out of the way, especially at a short track, even though Alex Bowman wasn't in the Final Four, but he did that. It's just going to be hard. They set a precedent, so hopefully we don't have to use that precedent over and over again. Hopefully that was like that thing, the main thing, what occurred, and can like hopefully be like, please don't do that, guys. But if you do, doesn't happen very often, but if you do, you're going to be suspended, and hopefully they can keep that up with consistency. But yeah, I think with the usual beating and banging, though, I think anyone can really win this way. Like, the driver was just suspended, but Wallace won 2 of his first ever NASCAR races in the Truck Series here at Martinsville, 2013, 2014. You have other guys, too, who are actually fighting for a playoff spot. Ryan Blaney, William Byron, guys who do very well here. So I think it's just going to be a fun race to watch with all the beating and banging. And I don't think anyone's going to cross the line. I don't think the fans at home thinking. You just got to hope they don't.
I think NASCAR will continue to look at these things on a case-by-case basis, and we can only hope that the penalty issue to Bubba Wallace sets a new precedent that will be followed in the coming years. If we ever see an incident as blatantly intentional and dangerous as that they will put the hammer down and actually decide to suspend their drivers. I think that's what I've been arguing for years, is what I've been arguing for on this show. My issue wasn't that Bubba Wallace got suspended. It's that drivers previous to him did not. So I think this new precedent hopefully will be a good thing for NASCAR going forward. But in terms of just the usual short track beating and banging, I've got a feeling you're going to see some of that this weekend. And hopefully it's a little bit better race than we had in the spring, because I know that got a pretty low rating on the Jeff Gluck poll, and fans weren't too happy with the kind of racing that we saw last time we were here. So hopefully it's a little bit better this time. And hopefully we also get a good race on the supercar side of things at Surfers Paradise this weekend. And we'll now hand it over to Matthew for that.
Oh, yeah, very excited once again for the supercar race. So the Repco Supercars Championship, it makes a return to Surfers Paradise for the penultimate race weekend of the 2022 season with the Gold Coast 500. Supercars is racing here for the first time since 2019, and there's a format change. Instead of doing 2 300-kilometer races with co-drivers, it's 2 races, 250 kilometers long, and only a single driver in each car. In the first race, without a surprise, Shane van Gisbergen got around David Reynolds during the early stages of the race and simply just never looked back, winning his 20th race of the year, 3rd Supercars title, which, according to Joe Samaniego, it is one of the best seasons we have seen with grid ranking, with 20 wins for Mr. Shane van Gisbergen. So for you, Kobe, after such an unprecedented season of dominance for SVG, how many Supercars championships could he earn by the end of his career?
Well, Matthew, I think sky's the limit for Shane van Gisbergen, and with his 3rd Supercars title, 2nd in a row, that puts him, he's tied 8th all time for most Supercars championships. He's tied with Scott McLaughlin, who's now racing IndyCar Series, the great Craig Lowndes, and the king of the mountain himself in Bathurst, Peter Brock. I think we could certainly see him get to 4 championships to tie Jim Richards, Alan Moffitt, and Bob Jane. I also think he could get to tie 2nd all time, with 5 titles, but can he reach Jamie Whincup at 7? I think it really depends on the parity level and if he can continue his same level of dominance in the Supercar Series. But it's just so incredible, considering how competitive motorsports are nowadays, that somebody can go out there in a single series and win 20 races. This has been quite an unprecedented season for Shane van Gisbergen. Yeah, yes, we saw him dominate last season. Yeah, we saw him and Scott McLaughlin, swap back and forth winning races when McLaughlin was racing. in supercars. We've seen drivers in other seasons in supercars won a lot of races as well, but unlike anything we've seen this year, it was in quite a season for Shane van Gisbergen. And as I've been saying on many of our past shows, I would be surprised if we see another season like this ever again. I think we're witnessing, as you said, Matthew, an unprecedented season of dominance that we haven't seen anywhere else in this motorsports world. And SVG, quite a year of 3 supercars titles. I think he could certainly add more. I guess it really depends on how much more he wants to accomplish in his supercars career. Shane van Gisbergen, early 30s, he's 33 years old right now. He could certainly be a supercars driver for many years to come, or maybe SVG decides that he wants to try something else like Scott McLaughlin. He accomplished everything he could have possibly accomplished in the Repco Supercars Championship, decided to go to IndyCar. Will Shane van Gisbergen go elsewhere and decide that he wants to try something new not, I guess, not just singly just dominate one series, or to really challenge himself? I guess stay tuned.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to make that point that Shane van Gisbergen is only 33 years old, and for somebody who has completely dominated the discipline of supercars racing, there are opportunities elsewhere. Since he is only 33 years old, that is not old in motorsport by any sort of the imagination. So is it possible for him to possibly explore other opportunities after winning his 3rd championship? And then likely, if he keeps up this dominance, he'll be known as one of the best to ever do it in this sport. But so speaking of SVG taking this dominant win over David Reynolds, the driver of the number 26 Ford Mustang started on the pole and actually raced hard in the early stages of this race. Reynolds held on for as long as he could, but at the end of the day, he was no match for the now 3-time Supercars champion. In the end, though, Reynolds finished in 2nd, holding off Chaz Masser and Will Davison. So for you, Kobe, once again, were you surprised that Reynolds had such good pace to start off this weekend?
Oh yeah, Matthew, and as you know well now, whenever a supercars race on, you expect Shane van Gisbergen to be near the top of the charts. Practice, you expect him to win the pole, and you expect him to win the race as well. I was very surprised that SVG didn't win the pole for race 1 this weekend on the Gold Coast, with David Reynolds winning the pole. That was quite a surprise to me, because David Reynolds, sometimes he'll get himself into top 5 and on the podium, but for the most part, you expect to see David Reynolds finish in the top 10, top 15 on most race weekends. And I was really surprised at the beginning, because he was able to hold off Shane van Gisbergen for as long as he did. I honestly thought SVG would make quick work of him at the start, but David Reynolds led the first handful of laps of this race. And Reynolds knew he didn't have the pace for Shane van Gisbergen, and his best bet was certainly to try to hold on for as long as he could, and for Reynolds to maintain that pace throughout the rest of the race. I thought that was quite impressive, and certainly a confidence booster for his team. And we'll see if David Reynolds can try to emulate the same performance we saw in race 1 and race 2 later tonight.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think that definitely can happen for race 2 tonight, is he can keep up that pace. And hopefully for him, it would be a great day to finish 2nd 2 races in a row, or even get the win over, which arguably the favorite here is obviously Shane van Gisbergen. But another driver who had to rally and really earn his position as a 4th place result was Will Davison. In the 85-lap caution-free race, Davison came into the pits and had what you could call a terrible pit stop that cost him a lot of time. Down in the running order, Davison spent the rest of the race hustling while doing an excellent job of managing his tires, and that's how he got to 4th place. So if it wasn't for the bad pit stop, who knows how the race would have ended for the number 17 Shell V-Power Ford Mustang. How impressive was Davidson's performance recovering from the misfortune on pit road and rallying to get a 4th place finish?
Well, Matthew, if supercars had a driver of the day award like they do in Formula 1, I definitely have to give it to Will Davison. That was such an impressive drive to watch throughout the 85-lap event. I was really surprised how well Will Davison was able to recover from that, because when he came in for his first pit stop, seeing how much time he lost, I was thinking, oh man, they had a really good car, and they've just thrown this race away for nothing. But Will Davison, as you said, Matthew, he kept hustling all race long, and being a veteran of the sport, he didn't get dejected. He knew that this is a longer race than what they usually run with this under the super spread format. So Will kept going. He did the most impressive thing to me was he was able to get all the way up there, almost on the podium. Managing his tires as well, and that's very hard to do. To try to fly through the field and manage your tires at the same time. But he was able to do it. I believe at the end of the first pit stop, I was like down in like 18th, 19th, 20th place, lost a whole bunch of positions, and to drive through the field like he was able to do, I was like, wow, that is such an impressive drive, and to be challenging to get on the podium right there then with Chaz Mostert, with Chaz Mostert, David Reynolds right there. That was a super impressive, and it also makes me wonder if Will Davison didn't have that penalty, would he be on the podium right now? I'm thinking probably yes, probably maybe even in second place. Did Will Davison have the pace to match Shane van Gisbergen? I don't know about that, but if I'm Will Davison, considering how I drove in race 1, I'm very excited about race 2 coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that. I think I think we see in motorsport kind of drivers succeed more, like, I guess you could say, driving angry. I mean, obviously you'd be upset if you were doing very well and then had what you could call a terrible pit stop, driving his way through the field, managing tire. You gotta like click into another level to be able to do what Will Davison did during this race. And I think we've seen it a lot recently. I think it happens a lot in NASCAR as well. A bad pit stop happens or something comes off, and then all of a sudden the driver's in 20th. And then it usually happens with like Denny Hamlin because he drives angry a lot of the time. So that, I just think that is a very fascinating thing. But I want to turn it over to Ben here for a very fun game that we play here at Grid Network.
That's right. It's time for Pick a Winner. Of course, as we mentioned, we've got 3 races to choose from this weekend. So, Kobe, we'll start with you and the Mexico City Grand Prix for Formula One. Who do you have? Well, let's go through the standings first, Kobe. I see you're still leading and have a 1-point advantage over Joe Samaniego, so I know you're going to want to be trying to extend that advantage this weekend. But who do you have taking the checkered flag in Mexico this weekend in Formula One?
I have a feeling that people are probably going to go with Checo, but I'm actually going to go with his teammate. Think Max Verstappen could get it done, but although a Checo win, I would not be disappointed. I really enjoy when drivers win their home Grand Prix because get to see the fans so excited, and the drivers really get into it as well. Also got IndyCar driver Pato O'Ward there in front of his home fans as well. I saw he was signing autographs. Really nice to see Pato interacting with the Mexican fans there.
Yeah, I think the first half of what Kobe said exactly, like, took the words right out of my mouth. I would love to pick Checo. It would be awesome to see him get it done here. But the only time I think I've gotten a Formula One race correct this season is when I picked Max Verstappen, and he's going for the 14th win, which would be the most in a single season Formula One history. Not percentage-wise, so I'm going Max Verstappen once again to get it done here.
There was an interesting tweet this weekend from ESPN F1 that said every F1 fan is hoping Checo wins in Mexico, Hamilton wins in Brazil, and Vettel wins in Abu Dhabi. I think that just gets less and less likely as it goes on, unfortunately. I think that would be those would be great stories all around, but I'm with you guys as well. My heart says Checo. I would love to see Checo get a home win. I think that would just be such an amazing scene down there in Mexico. But at the same time, I think Max Verstappen is certainly the pick that I would have to make with my head rather than my heart based on how this season has gone. I think he breaks the record this weekend and gets yet another win on this season. Now over to NASCAR at Martinsville Speedway. Kobe, who do you have taking the checkered flag in the Cup Series this weekend?
I think the driver who was close to winning last year but got turned around in the closing laps is going to get the job done. I think Denny Hamlin's going to go to victory lane at Martinsville in front of his hostile home crowd fans.
I'm going to say that we're going to see some NASCAR history with the most winners in a single season in points races, and I think young Ryan Blaney gets it done and get for finally winning a points race this season.
That's definitely an interesting selection. I've been saying I think we're going to break that record. Ryan Blaney is certainly a candidate to do that. I think it again, like we were saying, I think it's going to be kind of hard to predict this weekend, but I think something just telling me Joey Logano. So, I know that he's had some history and some run-ins at Martinsville before. I know he's already locked in, but I think he might just do what Kyle Larson did last year and take 2 of the 3 races, be the only driver in the championship for this one his way in. So I'm going to go with Joey Logano. Of course, we'll know a little bit more after we get the starting lineup here, but that's going to be my pick on the NASCAR side of things. In terms of supercars, I don't even know if we need to even ask the question here. I think I know the direction each of us is going to be going here, and you might even see him up there on the graphic there. But we'll ask the question anyway. Kobe, are you going with SVG, or are you going to shock us and pick a wild card selection here for the supercars portion to pick a winner?
I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Shane van Gisbergen, next.
Yep, Shane van Gisbergen.
Well, I think we'll make it unanimous there. As you can see, I need all the points that I can get. I'm not usually on the pre-race shows. I'm filling in for Joe today, so I sometimes forget to put my picks in. I wish I'd remembered to get it in yesterday because Shane van Gisbergen obviously is, I could have picked up 20 points just from him. I guess picking him by default every time for Supercars this season. It's been a phenomenal year. I see no reason why he won't pick up this race win as well.
Yeah, Shane van Gisbergen, always such an easy pick. And as for next year, with the new Gen 3 regulations come out with Holden leaving and Chevrolet Camaro coming in, along with the new Ford Mustang model coming in, who knows if we're going to be able to do this next year, because it could be an entirely different story. Because when we see regulation change from series to series, sometimes you'll see a certain driver who was dominating no longer be so dominant. We'll have to wait and see if Shane van Gisbergen will be able to be our easy pick for next year to get us all to stack up all of these points. I believe half of my pick a winner's points come from Shane van Gisbergen alone. So next year our scores might be a lot lower. And unfortunately, we're out of time for today. And taking a look at our schedule for the next couple of days, tomorrow, Sunday, Grid Live wrap up and be on the air 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Martinsville Speedway. And then Monday, we're going to have another edition of Grid Live Encore, and be sure to follow us on social media. Also want to give a big thank you to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, Deshell, and Robin. Thank you so much for what you do for the Grid Network. We really appreciate this. Could not do this without your support. And you can be sure to check out Buy Me a Coffee as well for a one-time donation. Definitely a big shout out to Edward Hunter from formerly Zone, Amber and Zachary for buying us a coffee. We truly appreciate that. Also, you can use public.com to invest in the stock market. Use the code GRIDnet to earn free stocks, and you can be sure to get started with that and utilize the stock market for your own personal investment. For Ben Snyder, Matthew Bro, and Joshua Birch, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.